Welcome everyone to this webinar on the looking at 2020 and 2021, how to navigate moving forward from this time since we're living in unusual times. I'm Kaylin Castell, and Daniel's going to be probably doing most of the sharing today because he has some amazing insights to share with you about what's going on. So Daniel, you want to take it away?
I would actually like to start with a couple of prayers for us to tune in here. The first one is from the Mother. Lord God of our being, we are before Thee, Thy will may be done. Remove from our thoughts all obstacles and doubts, all weaknesses, limitations, all that veils our knowledge and obscures our understanding. I am athirst for Thy consciousness. I am athirst for the integral union with Thee, not in inaction and a flight from physical activity, but in complete, absolute, perfect accomplishment of Thy will. The splendor of Thy supreme light must spring forth from all the darkness that is swept down upon the earth. That's the first. The other is that, as you all know, and we're going to be starting with some of my favorite words from Rajar. He wrote in one of his books, I'm going to turn it into kind of an invocation or a prayer. I pray to become irreversibly committed to a purpose, to become an agent of the divine, of the eonic spiritual reality in which we live, move, and have our true humanness. Some may call that reality God or Christ, others Buddha, still others may speak of the Great Mother, Earth, or now, if their vision is turned toward the sky, of the galaxy, in whose immense space humans are living as fish in the ocean. So I would like to go directly into, some of you will have seen this before. It's also in a document that was sent to everyone who's participating in this event today, which is something written in 1973, which has actually been the foundation of everything I've ever done. And I've been a professional astrologer now since 1970. And this is called Choosing to be Seed People. Wrote this in 1971. I like to read it aloud as you go through it. You must realize that crises are sometimes necessary to accomplish what is to be accomplished. The only problem, however, is that something must be ready before that great crisis comes when the new cycle begins. For it will have to begin on the foundation of those seeds that were sown. If you have a winter followed by a spring, but there is no harvest in the fall, no seed will germinate during the spring. And you'll have to start at the very beginning into the most primitive time of manifestation. That's why I've stressed so much all my life the idea of what I call seed man and a seed woman. The seed person, the individual who is willing and able to gather within himself or herself, as it were, the past of humanity, particularly of our Western world, but also all other cultures. Because what we want to emerge from the future, and whatever crisis will come, is a global world. We therefore need men and women of great vision, individuals who are not specialists, men and women who have the vision and courage to wait. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
And in some way, through their lives, through their example, and through whatever they leave after their deaths to become the seeds of the future world. That's, of course, the great choice we have all to make. And we all can make it. We can follow the mass vibration and decay like all the leaves of the world in the fall. However beautiful the golden leaves may be, they will have to decay and become manure. We always call that compost when we talk about Pluto, for the future of civilization. But it's only the seed men and women that really count. And it is those you should look for. I realize, Kaylin, a very important passage was not taken at the beginning.
Oh.
It's where he says, This is the, I don't know how I got that left out. So I'm going to have to say it here. This is, again, what he wrote in 1973. We are certainly in a difficult time. And what is ahead of us today, I do not know. I am rather pessimistic as far as the immediate future is concerned, considering the way the world and our nation is moving at the present time. But that's not what it comes in. But you must realize crises are sometimes necessary to accomplish what is to be accomplished. Yeah, and so that actually speaks a little bit to what my own life's journey has been, because these series of different crises, these different agendas that have been in play for a very long time, goes all the way back. This is not something new. You know, I mean, the rise and fall and the collapse of the American dollar in 1970, the 1972 book that was saying Aquarius, utopia or apocalypse, you know. This was all like seeded a long time ago in the awareness of people. So what I wanted to do next is to go through just a little bit of a timeline. We've updated the timeline a little bit, because the issue at stake here is where an event like what we're experiencing now in 2020 is happening is not any old time. So actually, there is this way of looking at the astrological ages. One complete cycle, nearly 26,000 years. So here's the sine wave of the astrological ages. And in the way that the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School understands it, the center point of a great turning of the ages was 1998. And in all the work we've done together in the school, so in other words, you could say if you had to use Aquarius, you know, the age of Aquarius, but also the other three, the age of Leo, the age of Taurus, the age of Scorpio, they're all four beginning in 1998. But what is the zone? More about that in a moment. So let's go to this next one, the Yuga one. So
this one?
No, these dates, yes.
Yeah.
So in the latest research on these huge cycles throughout history, the yugas, this way India does it, tremendous research made in 2012 was able to integrate all the different yuga systems, and it really remarkably lines up with the precessional cycle. So we have the ascending Kali Yuga beginning 24,676 BC. And you can see on this list here, the descending Kali Yuga began 3676 BC. The ascending Kali Yuga, 676 BC to 2025. So the ascending Kali Yuga ends in 2025. Keep that particular date in mind as we go through the rest of the material today. Some people mistakenly believed that, oh, when the Kali Yuga is over, then it goes into the Golden Age again. No, look, go back to the other sign, yes. Okay. So it's more like that. So that you start at a Golden Age, you go down to the bottom, and then then slowly go back up. If you go back to the Yuga list there, we would see the Yugas. Kaylin, sorry.
Right.
We can see that when the gold ascending Sat Yuga, 15,676 BC, and so therefore the Kali Yuga went up until, the Sat Yuga lasted up until 9,976 BC, interestingly. Now, that corresponds to so much of new research that's come through in the last couple of years. In fact, the slide after where you showed the stars, Kaylin, yes. See, here we have Vega was the North Star, 13,000 to 11,000 BC, but Deneb, Milky Way, pointed directly north. In other words, the Milky Way galaxy was, the Milky Way you see in the sky, was pointed perpendicularly to the stars of Cygnus and the birds on the top of the world pole. And so actually, the golden age was back then. You know, European consciousness believes, well, how could that be? Because Europe was all covered by ice. But there was definitely like civilization and amazing stuff happening 16,000 years. Okay, now, that's a whole other digression we can get into. But the main point here about this, so we can place ourselves in time, is that the simplest way to understand the yugas is that during a golden age, the entirety of the human heart is available. Silver Age, 3/4. Bronze Age, half. And in the Iron Age of the Kali Yuga, only 1/4 of the human heart is available. Now, that doesn't mean you only have 1/4 of the human heart available. That's more of an average. It's more like the collective planet. And it has been said by those that have researched this particular issue, the way they speak of it in India and other places, that if you have an open heart in the golden age, it's no big deal because everybody does. But if you have an open heart in the Kali Yuga, it's a hugely important thing. I mean, and this actually, and I spoke of this in the one we did last 3 years ago, Kaylin. This whole larger sense of where we are in the world calendar answers a great deal in my own life about something that I could never figure out. In my life, I have been fortunate to have some experiences of open-hearted love, both loving others and being loved myself. I've also had the opportunity to, a few times, to connect with that infinite love that comes from the mother and that comes from great mystery, particularly at sacred sites. When you have that experience, how can that not be where you come from? I mean, I could not believe why it's the minority opinion, why that on the planet still people will continue to choose something else other than that. And that is, how can people, it's like the Dalai Lama, who is like, how can they do that? How can humans behave that way? Let's go forward. I think this helps explain the predicament in some ways that we're in.
Absolutely. I just want to say before we do that is that if 1/4 of the human heart is readily or more readily available, only 1/4, but some people may have no access
to
the heart energy, and that's why they can do what they do. That's how they can be the way they are.
But it's still available in there somewhere. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I've been an idealist on this, that every human being has that capacity to connect in with that. But recently, with the rise of psychopathy and sociopathic behavior on the planet, I'm a little skeptical. I think there's some humans out there that are already AI and they don't have the capacity for empathy and compassion. So I think to be a true human being, you have to have the capacity for empathy and compassion. So let's take another quick journey here. This is a historical timeline bringing us up to the current time period without going back 26,000 years. Late 1800s. The beginning of the age of Aquarius is proposed by the Theosophists, where Yukteswar announces the imminent end of Kali Yuga. 1920s, a great number of books appear announcing the start of the age of Aquarius. The School of Astrosophy, led by Elizabeth Reed, discussed the precessional cycles integrated with other cycles of the solar system. She writes of the need to develop an astrology that recognizes both the seasonal and sidereal zodiacs, presaging the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. February 1962, 7-planet alignment in Aquarius inspires many to announce the beginning of the Aquarian age. Now, I'm speaking of this from the perspective of someone 71 years old, okay? 1961 to 1963. 3 TV shows, One Step Beyond, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits TV shows, hugely influence an entire generation. It has in fact been said by some writers, whether you saw those shows or not when you were like a teenager or you're 11 or 12 years old, would determine whether or not you would end up becoming progressive or conservative. Let's go forward. Late 1960s, Dane Bridjar helps inspire an astrological renaissance among young people with a global and historical perspective, using a non-predictive, deeply spiritual and psychological perspective. The dawning of the age of Aquarius enters the popular culture through song and stage. 1969, in the book Hamlet's Mill, appears with the first description of the winter solstice alignment at the intersection of the plane of the solar system and the plane of the Milky Way. I don't know of any astrologers back then that really got the full significance of that. 1979 to 1999, Pluto inside the orbit of Neptune, like a seed coming in, creating a Pluto generation, a speeded up Pluto generation. The same generation, but the same thing happened at the time of those who made the French and the American Revolution. The very same thing happened then. 1980s, myself and Mardix first proposed what was later to become known as the galactic alignment. Through their work with direct night sky observation, both also proposed abandoning the age of Aquarius emphasis and instead use a larger, more global framework. Gemario begins using the phrase turning of the ages for these newly emergent understandings. 1997, the astronomer Jean Meus, prompted by myself, calculated the exact midpoint of the galactic alignment, which would occur in 1998. In the book, The Fourth Turning is published, suggesting the United States would reach the end of its millennial seculum by 2025. Continue. 1990, yes. Exact calculated midpoint of the galactic alignment. John Major Jenkins published Mayan Cosmogenesis 2012, followed by the galactic alignment. In 2002, educating many more people about the cosmological situation in these times, following up on the work of Gemario, Mardix, and others, as well as contributing to the 2012 hoopla. 1999 to 2000, the turning of the millennium, the Y2K crisis. 2001, all visible planets in one small sector of the sky, causing many to suggest this indicated the end and beginning of the new age. I even wrote an article about that at that time. The Shamanic Astrology Mystery School begins proposing.
And also 9/11, because we added that in, Daniel.
Right, yeah. And also 9/11 then, yes. 2000. Shamanic Astrology Mystery School begins proposing the date range for the turning of the ages to be 1962 to 2034. And with 1998 right as a center point. And then you have 36 years on either side. Why? Because 72 years is 1 degree of the precessional cycle. And actually, I noticed that you're using a phrase for that now, like a womb.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a womb of we could say of the next cycle.
The great cosmic womb.
Yeah. January 2008, Pluto enters Capricorn in financial crash. Okay, let's bring it forward. December solstice 2012, hyped as the end of the Mayan calendar. This certainly got the world's attention. July 2012, Vibhu Dev Mishra's research on the end of the Kali Yuga, unveiling the mysteries of the Yuga cycle, which actually added this additional global piece to our understanding of the precessional cycle. 2017, the 6th great mass extinction is confirmed by various studies. May 15th, 2018, Uranus entered Taurus. December 2019, Jupiter enters Capricorn. March 2020, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto aligned in Capricorn with Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in close alignment most of the year. And I think we have one more here, yes. Yep. December 20, solstice, 2020, Jupiter enters Aquarius. Saturn entered Aquarius March 21st, 2020. 2021, Saturn in Aquarius squares Uranus and Taurus 3 times. And I want to indicate here, that situation is going to be one of the primary parts of the 3rd talk in this series, which is about the Aquarius and its shadow. 2022, USA Pluto return. A 248-year cycle, yes, comes within 1 degree in 2021. Within 44 minutes of exactness, April 25th, 2021. February 20, 2022, first exact pass of Pluto to the USA chart. 2025, end of the fourth turning, and the end of Kali Yuga. So I'm just basically presenting this as a larger context to understand. You know, I mean, let me just speak personally for a moment. I am on the front lines with this. I have Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto on my moon and on my home and roots. And to have the fact that I have this happening right here at this time has involved unbelievable amounts of surrender. I had huge amounts of plans for this year, for the school, for a variety of different other things in my life. All of it completely had to be abandoned. Now, how do you compare that to, well, I know I have 3 friends of mine that are multimillionaires and that have all these investments in the system. They've lost it all, you know, I mean, so, but I mean, how can you compare, you know, the difference? It's all pretty relative as far as the kind of surrender we're being forced to go through. But for me personally, it really has, as I'm sharing this, you know, sometimes I can act like I have researched the subject. Yes, I have some idea about what's going to happen. And, you know, I can even egoically look back to what I said at the end of 2017 and said, you all weren't listening. You know, it was going to be 2020. All right. But then, of course, then, you know, the cosmic trickster made me believe it was June, not March. And so I ended up almost stuck in the US. My wife, same 22-degree Capricorn moon, stuck in India. We each got literally the last plane out to get back to be with each other for this time. It was quite a remarkable thing that had to happen. So what I'm saying here with this, that yes, I might sound like I know what I'm talking about here, but in all honesty, the ultimate Capricorn lesson is that there's way, way more available to know in what it is you don't know, you know. So there's a certain massive surrender. I'm going to be suggesting ways of navigating what's taking place as we go through this. But please, I'm not trying to act like I'm some, yes, I've got some wizard secret knowledge about it, even though my ego could say, yeah, I told you all at the end of 2017. So anyway, let's move forward, because the next thing we look at, no, actually, yeah, we'll go here next. Just some of the stuff regarding Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in 2020. So Mars was with Jupiter March 20th. Mars is exact with Saturn March 31st. By June, Jupiter and Saturn rise before midnight. Living here now, in this place in the Philippines, we have a great sunrise view. And it was very clear this morning. The lineup of the 3 was just so spectacular this morning. I mean, what is it telling us? You know, I mean, it's really striking. And then also today, we happen to be doing this presentation at the time of the crown chakra, the 8th gate Venus Moon conjunction. In fact, some of you,
7th gate. 7th gate, crown chakra.
I thought it was an 8th.
There is an 8th, but that's next month.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
all right. Sorry. But anyway, it's a beauty. Here we're going to see them almost exactly together in the sky tonight. You'll see it tonight where you are.
I think for us in the US, it'll be more tomorrow night.
There, right? Okay.
Yeah. But also, I just wanted to say that if you are looking east in the morning, it's been remarkable. Hopefully people have been able to see this. Mars approaching Jupiter, then beside Jupiter, now past Jupiter, moving towards Saturn. That is just, you know, it's over the next few days, Mars is going to, by the 31st, will be with Saturn and then move past Saturn. And so the lineup, it's like they've been, you know, playing musical chairs or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's if you get a chance to look out in the morning before the sun comes up, it's really worth seeing.
A lot of this information in more depth has gone into in one of the bonus the gifts that come along with this, which is the talk that Kaylin and I did at the end or around solstice of the end of last year. So we're just highlighting some of this stuff coming up here. July 14th, retrograde Jupiter opposite the Sun. July 20, retrograde Saturn is opposite the Sun. Why I thought June was going to be the big deal, you'll see here in the next minute as we go through these slides. By December, Jupiter and Saturn fade into the evening twilight. December 21st, Saturn is about 6 arc minutes from Jupiter, just 30 degrees from the Sun. Not easy to see, but it's Saturn and Jupiter together.
And the closest they've been in a long time, and definitely the closest in 20 years. And it'll be 20 years before they come back this close, anywhere near this close together, right?
Rare conjunctions and alignments. You can have this here, Saturn-Pluto conjunction, that's already happened. April 4th, June 30th, November 12th, Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, every 13 years. Then a lot of these other events, around this coming solstice is another one of those real astounding flashpoints, right around the solstice.
Yeah, I just want to say, Daniel, that it's interesting that January 12th was the exact Saturn-Pluto conjunction, because they were coming close together by the end of December 2019 and into January. And it was January when really the coronavirus became more known to people and became, was more in their awareness. And so, and there's, in Richard Tarnas's book, Cosmos and Psyche, he talks about pandemics and Saturn-Pluto, not just conjunct, but in other configurations, but definitely conjunctions are a big one. So just interesting.
Okay, let's move forward. Okay, so the eclipses, I think, are really important this year. And one reason why I believe that the June time was going to be so important was there's this annular solar eclipse. There was the one that happened in December. I was in Singapore for it. They worked together in a sense. They both rose in the Middle East. The one that happened in near Christmas went across Singapore, but the one that's happening in June, remarkably, goes across northern India. It starts in the Middle East, goes across northern India, and then it goes straight across Tibet and bullseye directly on Wuhan. And then it ends just before it leaves the Chinese mainland. This actually makes me think that the pathways of eclipses are not just about what happens after the eclipse, but it's presaging what happens before. I mean, in other words, events happen in that area, and then the eclipse is going over it in June. And the additional factor that makes that so important, do you have the slide there of the sun on the hand of the high man?
Yeah. So this is the way Orion looks in this particular star map. But see, his hand is reaching up, and the sun is right on the top of his hand here. So this is the sun and the moon together in an eclipse on the hand of the high man.
At zero Cancer, so that's galactic edge, and at this time in history, that is the antipode of galactic center. I mean, of where the solstices align with the galactic alignment.
Right. So we have the plane of the galaxy intersecting the plane of the solar system, or the ecliptic, creating the cross in the sky, the galactic cross in the sky. One at the center of the galaxy, one at the edge of the galaxy, and this one is at the edge.
And some parts of the world put their stronger emphasis on the galactic center. Other parts of the world put their greater emphasis on the galactic edge, the stars around in the sacred hoop. You know, the stars including Orion, including Sirius, including the Pleiades, including all the things within the hoop, which is where transmission comes from outside of the galaxy into the galaxy. It's also the place where souls incarnate through. So I felt that, and when I learned when I was in Ireland, they use this as a symbol to determine their greater ages. It's not just when the solstices and equinoxes are on the hand of the high man, but also when the Beltane alignment is there. with the Lammas alignments are there. And they relate it to what's happened in their own culture, you know, with the waves of patriarchal invaders came through 1500 BC and destroyed the original culture. And that was when the Beltane sun was right on the hand of the high man. And they look at the situation now as being essentially the big over, you know, the whole thing turns over.
It occurs to me too, Daniel, just to clarify this, because I'm seeing that it says this is the last eclipse on the hand of the high man for 26,000 years, meaning the last time the eclipse, solar eclipse, is on the hand of the high man at the June.
This larger time frame in history.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that, because, you know, it will happen again, but it may not be at a major solstice or equinox point.
Right.
It definitely won't be at the June solstice point, probably for about 26,000 years.
And Gemini Brett did some interesting research on this about the periodicity of Saturn-Pluto conjunctions and how this year, it course, the one 23 Capricorn, how do I know that degree? It's my moon degree. It's at 37.2 years. So it's a way in which the nodal cycle corresponds to the Saturn-Pluto conjunctions. It's beyond the scope of our thing here today, but you can, for those that are interested in researching that more, that's also an additional piece. Actually, we may have time to go more into that in the 4th class when we go into some more of the stuff that does not get covered in this larger view presentation.
Right, this is more of an overview and getting people familiar. Oops. Oh, yeah. So,
so
go ahead.
Do we have any more slides we want to look at? Because I wanted to jump into something.
So I don't know. I mean, these are so it's up to you, Daniel. But this is basically, this is the moon. Well, I just wanted to mention this because we talked about the June solstice eclipse. Then there's the July 4th or 5th, depending on your time zone, eclipse, lunar eclipse that's taking place, partial lunar eclipse, not far from Saturn. The moon's not far from Saturn and Jupiter. It's kind of sitting between them, and that it's happening at 13 degrees. The sun will be at 13 degrees Cancer. The moon will be at 13 degrees Capricorn, and that connects to the U.S. chart in a powerful way. So as you were just saying, the thing about, you know, how the June solstice is going over Wuhan, well, we have an eclipse going over Wuhan. We've got an eclipse happening here on the birthday of the US chart. So
that's I think it's very significant. Thank you on that.
Yeah. So we don't have to look at any more of these unless you want to, but that also just the other piece, and we shared this in the December solstice event, I'll just quickly mention it, that Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto were at 13 degrees in 2014 when the Grand Cross happened. And of course that affected the US chart at the sun at 13 Cancer. So, and so this full moon feels like it's an activation of that Grand Cross, whatever was put into place at the time of the Grand Cross back in 2014.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, so I don't know if there's any, if you wanted to look at the November eclipses, but November, December, or if you wanted to wait and come back to that, or what?
Yeah, I think maybe we can use this for our 4th class.
Okay. So is there anything else we wanted to mention now?
Well, this is just kind of something to speculate on, is that because we don't really know the meaning of this, but we're certainly getting clues. It's very rare we have time periods that last this long where there's no retrograde planets. Like March 9th through April 25th, no retrograde planets. January 10th through February 16th, no retrograde planets. And it's very easy to project, you know, as many people do regarding retrogrades, you know, like project good, bad, you know, or, you know, so like, oh no, retrograde, or, you know, I can't wait till it goes direct. Our view is not that one, but I'm beginning to suspect that retrogrades can be extremely useful. And that maybe when everything is direct, that it's a whole lot easier not to look at the deeper story.
Or to
So
make
just,
up a story that you want. It's like, you know, if we
Mhm.
look at what's been happening on the world stage and not paying attention and just saying, well, it'll all magically go away. And
Right.
that's not been the case, because instead it's just been moving forward at a really high rate of speed, right?
So the next thing I wanted to get into is just to speak, this will be done next time too. We're not
Okay.
looking at
All
synodic
right.
now.
So then, yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna
I
stop
want
you
to
now.
speak. I want to speak a little bit to the essence, as we perceive it in the school, of the three main players for this year: Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Now, this is you can get a sense of this somewhat simply with Jupiter. Jupiter, just whatever it hits, it expands. It's as if whatever Jupiter hits it, good or bad. I mean, it could be a challenging thing. It expands that. If it's something that's really your dharma, it expands that. It's like on steroids. And you can look back in 1968. At that time period, the great outer planet configuration was Uranus-Pluto, but the year 1968 was the year that Jupiter was with it. You know, so it's like the amplification of the Jupiter effect on the outer planet transits certainly showed up then. And now we have not Uranus and Pluto, we have Saturn and Pluto that are being amplified by the Jupiter effect, we could say, or that's the Jupiter part of it. Now Saturn, we have to be very careful when we think about Saturn, because what most of us have learned about Saturn in regular, more mainstream approaches, or the way the tradition was about Saturn, was actually a patriarchal Saturn, not the original essence of Saturn. Originally, Saturn is simply an operating manual. It's like rules of engagement. You know, you can't jump off a high chair and not be smashed to the ground by gravity. You know, the Aquarius moon baby, I can fly. You know, no, sorry, you know, we got gravity here. It also has to do with like, you know, when maturation happens. You know, the lifespans, phases of life, rules of engagement, operating manual. But Saturn, we have to remember, and it kind of got fully implemented about 2,000 years ago. But if we go back maybe as far as 5,000 years ago, Saturn has been dominated by what I call, at this point, the quadruple aberration. Now, back in 2017, I called it the triple aberration, but I've actually kind of expanded my view on this a little bit. Kind of like, what are the attributes of the Kali Yuga? You know, how do we know that we're sort of an Iron Age, dense age? Well, it's four things. Number one, hierarchical patriarchy. It's a new system. Doesn't really go back that far. I mean, you put that together with patrilineal family descent. You know, the possessions and the status goes through the line of the oldest son. Also really, really recent, 5,000 to 6,000 years. Most of the world was matrilineal. Interestingly, where I live in the Philippines, before the Spanish took it over, they had one of the few places they had a dual system. So it would go through the oldest daughter and the oldest son, both. Interesting. But there's a huge implications to that. I've spoken in my workshops about this, where I said, can you give me one evolutionary advantage to this system, hierarchical patriarchy and patrilineal family descent? And literally the only person who ever answered that, and I guess it was kind of in a joking way, he said, well, yeah, it's easier to control people that way. And yes, indeed. So the third thing is fundamentalistic monotheism. The one God, usually the male figure, right? The soul is polytheistic. There are many gods and goddesses. The further back you go, even the sun and the moon all have their own gods and goddesses. And the soul itself is polytheistic. I think that's why I don't like sun sign astrology. The sun sign astrology is kind of a relic of monotheism. And so anyway, That's the third factor. And then the fourth one, the one I added to the list, and I'm putting all of this into what has really put viruses into Saturn, if we want to say it that way, infections into Saturn, is the inversion of leadership. I mean, it used to be that if you were a king, if you were an elder, if you were the priestess, if you were the priest, you had philosophical and spiritual initiation. And so then you were protected. You were revered as an elite or an elder, or, you know, someone who has some degree of value in your culture. But there's been a great inversion. Now, to be an elite, all it requires is a bigger army, more money, or in certain circles, the right bloodline, okay? So, I mean, this is a complete inversion. And this tells us we're in the Kali Yuga, but that's not really Saturn. Saturn at its best, in its most ancient history, is a feminine energy, just like Capricorn is. And we'll speak about that regarding Capricorn. My mentor, Rajar, speaks of Capricorn and Pluto as feminine. Okay, I mean, in fact, there's some very interesting writings by Rajar about Pluto being a seed coming from the galactic, which is a feminine force. You know, so Ereshkigal, if you were, or as you were. Anyway, Capricorn, we have to look at these days as the circle of elders, the circle of grandmothers. And it's not just about women. I mean, both men and women can know who they serve as the circle of grandmothers. And they're the ones who get to make the decisions to who to hire and fire the chiefs, the decisions for the benefit of the culture and the generations to come, the honoring of the earth, the maintenance, the sustainability of the earth. This earth is an earth sign, not some Yahweh, Jehovah figure or your dad. Okay, so it's beyond that, and so we're revisioning that, and that all goes within the context of what's happening in 2020. So Jupiter is expanding Saturn. Well, usually that which is in control or wants to control does not like to change. You know, there is a conservative kind of thing in Capricorn. I mean, that's, you know, if the old traditions work, or if you believe they worked, you know, you don't look at it realistically. Well, it worked 3,000 years ago. Well, I guess it's going to work now. Or I guess the nuclear family worked really good in 1955 to 1970, but certainly not working very well now. We're developing a whole new way of understanding kinship right now. You know, kinship groups, small community groups, and so on. But the key figure in all of this is Pluto. An amazing Dane Rajar quote about Pluto. I love this one. Written in 1970. Pluto often tends to bring into the open the shadow of political power or personal ambition. It forces any entrenched group to surrender its privileged position or else face revolution and or moral and spiritual decay. I think that summarizes what Pluto is about in a major sense. And so if we have Jupiter expanding Pluto, and then you've got Saturn in there also, you know, kind of I want to hold on to the old structures. And if there's Jupiter is saying, yeah, you even have greater strength to hold on to the old structures, but there's Pluto. What needs to get composted will be composted. So in our view, Pluto, whenever you're faced with Pluto circumstances, it really is about surrender. It is about powerlessness. To say this in the quickest form I can share it with you, you know you're in a Pluto situation, collectively or personally, when there's some challenge, personal or collective, there's some challenge, and you can't figure it out. You can't power your way through it, and you can't pretend it doesn't matter. And you know, that's surrender. And if there was a technique for surrender, it wouldn't be surrender. So somehow this whole thing is being orchestrated in order to produce surrender. But now we need to immediately get to probably what is the most important part of this whole presentation. What do we do? What does shamanic astrology suggest is a way to approach this 2020 scenario, and who knows what is to come? Okay, we don't know. As Rajar said in 1973, I have no idea what's coming, but it's coming. The whole system has reached its exhaustion point, composting. Anyway, we suggest, and boy, this current situation of this, the coronavirus, oh God, sorry. This computer says they're going to update. No way, postpone. Sorry, we're going to compost this session. This situation we face in the world today is a marvelous opportunity to work it with the three-world approach. So in shamanic astrology, it's something we've gotten straight from Shamanism 101, looking at the world as upper world, middle world, and lower world. Upper world is sometimes called the celestial world. The middle world is the real world, you know, Saturn's world. And then the underworld is Pluto. Underworld is also called the lower world or underworld. And certain planets are allocated to each of these. Uranus and Neptune are upper world. Pluto, Chiron are underworld. Jupiter and Saturn in the nodal cycles are middle world. And then the faster moving planets, as part of their synodic cycles, will go through at various points all three. So how to approach this? Well, let's start with the celestial, kind of a combination of a Neptune view and a Uranian view. Well, from that perspective, all is well. The universe is unfolding as it should. And whatever your view is, whether it's the ETs got it under control, or the Great Mother has it under control, or the unfoldment of great mystery is ineffable, and but it's all fine, it's all is well. The Buddhist perception that the self is empty, that this whole physical thing we're in here, it has no real basis, it's all just rising and falling. That's a celestial world approach. The Aquarian or Uranian view sometimes takes this to an extreme. You know, like evolution means not having to have a body, to only have consciousness. You know, I'm going to speak to that a great deal regarding in the third talk, the Aquarian and Shadow of Aquarius. But from the celestial perspective, it's absolutely true. And there's beautiful things that have been showing up in the last couple weeks. Maybe some of you saw that, the virus's message to humanity. And the capacity at this point for people to just stop, to slow down, to not have to to the breakneck speed of more and more and more comes to a stop. A pause and reflect, a time to tune into our spiritual path, to the celestial realm. I think this has been a very, very valuable part of it, but that's only one of three worlds. And whenever my skeptic always comes up when I see something like that, and it says, yeah, well, okay, but there's all these people that are looking out their window at a sky with no planes and no chemtrails, right? But they can't go out of their home. You know, they're not allowed to go to the park, you know, stuff like that. So there's, as well as what are they actually doing while we're in lockdown, you know? So there's that middle world voice that comes in. But still, from the celestial perspective, I do have the trust in the Mother, in great mystery, that that those of us that know who we really are, all is well. Now, if we go to the underworld next, go to the underworld, Pluto, well, annihilation. I mean, I looked at it this morning. Actually, in the Philippines is so completely freaked out right now that the headline in the Philippine news is, "The Philippines is on the verge of annihilation." That was the headline. But we don't even have to use that as an example. It's like, you know, the asteroid could actually be hitting in 6 months, or the way some Australian Aboriginals now are really plugged in, telling some of their prophecies now that this is not just the end of any old cycle. This really is the 6th mass extinction, and there's a wave coming in, and so it's the end of the entire experiment. You know, so it's not like we don't have time to you know, how it was 12,000 years ago. You know, which was you know, a lot of hunter-gatherers are left over. There's a few, you know, smart elite people that restart civilization and the whole thing, and then it takes us 12,000 years to get to this point again. You know, so it's kind of like they're going to do something quicker, as it were. I mean, that's coming out of Australia right now, and you can see some of those views if you access something like Nexus magazine, and I'll talk to people in Australia that have connection to the Aboriginals. So that it's ultimate surrender. I mean, and on a personal and a collective level, things that we've been attached to. Personally, you know, how much I know, what do I look like, what does my resume say, what are my accomplishments or achievements, you know, and so on, is irrelevant, completely irrelevant. I mean, it's like who we really are in the inside is our sovereign, autonomous connection to divinity. That's human beings. That's not AI. Anyway, that's the underworld part of it. But what about the middle world? Now here, this is where you can really go down rabbit holes. What is actually happening here? I guess I'm a masochist in a certain sense. I follow all the different, go down all the rabbit holes of the different scenarios, you know. I mean, I have a list of people that I just really love. I love Energetic Synthesis by Lisa Renee. I love James Corbett, Sawyer G. I love John Bergman. I love Derek Brose. I love The Conscious Resistance. I love Technocracy Now! Sometimes, Josh Del Sol, some of David Icke's stuff. I mean, there's marvelous, interesting sources of information where you can see the different scenarios. And I also am quite aware, and 3 of my closest friends are really bought into the view that Trump has the white hat. And this whole thing is designed in order to expose, and you know, they're going to bring in the military. They're going to have the military take over the internet, but that's a good thing because then they're going to be installing the quantum internet. And Elon Musk's plan of putting a little thing right behind your ear that connects you to the quantum internet, so you can be a part AI and part human, will be implemented. You know, all these agendas are out there. I certainly think that being aware of them without fear is an exercise in awareness, an exercise in consciousness. And I say all these things not to have any kind of fear, but to not just get lost in the celestial and not pay attention to what is actually taking place during this lockdown. And look for all sources of information. Do not just look at the mainstream media on it. Look at the actual WHO statistics on who dies, and also question the testing, and certainly question if they want to force a vaccination. I mean, these are very, very important things to keep in mind here. And I you know, I'm out on a limb here saying kind of stuff like this because there's a lot of fear. And there's a lot of different agendas, and it's hard to sort it out. And particularly if you know someone personally who has this, I mean, you need to know that testing only tests for all the coronaviruses, not just coronavirus 19, you know. So you and I, Kaylin, you know, we speculated on this. You and me and 3 or 4 other people I know got a very severe flu lasted 3.5 weeks, but we're back in November and December.
Mine was in February, but yeah.
Right. Before this thing ever, you know, all right.
Right.
So, and way more people die of the flu every year around the world than so far that have died from this thing. So, I mean, I question all the different agendas. I do not know for sure which one is right. I surrender to the plan of the mother. And yet I have to also look at the truth of what is happening in the middle world. Keep your eyes open. Don't be a sheep. Because I think ultimately what we will have to do in 2020 will all be faced with a choice. Do we choose our autonomous, sovereign self in connection with divinity, or do we submit to an agenda that we don't know really what it is? I mean, this whole thing has been orchestrated, in my view, magnificently well. Who are the ultimate ones pulling the string? I haven't completely sorted it out. I'm an agnostic. Again, what I'm wanting to bring forth here, no answers, but at all possibility, to whatever extent you can, have all three worlds there. This could be the end of everything. Yes, it might be, okay? This could be the ascension into, I don't know, I mean, I get some of these YouTubes, you know, like the world will split in two, you know, and it's practically like a Christian Left Behind scenario. You know, your partner who doesn't even believe in it, that in any of this stuff is, all of a sudden you've disappeared and they're still in bed, you know. I mean, to me, that is way out there as far as celestial worldview. So have all three. Be skeptical, but also be open to the benefits and the silver linings that are coming through on this. You know, the biggest, in all honesty, the biggest surrender I've had to go through here is that for the last year, I have relentlessly pushed the idea that we need to be together, soul to soul, in-person connection. I have not liked virtual ways of connecting. That's where I come from, more indigenous traditions, and I still hold that to be the case. And I will still, as we go through these years, hold out the hope and the intention that we gather in council, that we gather soul to soul, organic to organic, as peoples of the same kin. But in the meantime, all we've got, as long as the internet is free to use, it's not like Russia that is controlled by the state internet, or China controlled by the state internet. As long as we have the use of this, we use it. And I'm very, very happy to be able to use this here. I wanted to offer one other thing here before we open it up to discussion and questions, which I'm sure we're going to have some from what has been shared so far. As again, this is just an introduction. You know, what we have coming up is the next class will be the foundations, philosophical and spiritual foundations of the Shamanic Astrology Paradigm, and some of the core, most important techniques in this paradigm to sort this out. You know, like, what is your place on the wheel? What is your role in what is unfolding here in 2020? Do you become actively involved? Do you leave the country? Do you become like what? You have to like keep quiet, or you just tune out completely because you have a place in nature that you can just hang out with. I mean, there's all kinds of different possibilities. You build a community according to new principles. That the Shamanic Astrology Paradigm gives us amazing tools about how to tune in to what that is. And then we'll have a class on the shadow of Aquarius, and this one we're going to go way more into the idealistic promise of Aquarius. Remember, Saturn has already moved into Aquarius, but it goes back into Capricorn. So Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius at the end of the year, and the remarkably important Saturn square Uranus, Taurus. It's like the standoff between Aquarius and Taurus, and what that's about. We have a whole class on that. And then there'll be a fourth class on which is all the stuff we haven't covered regarding the cycles that are happening this year and next year, as well as bringing in the synodic cycles and some of the other elements that can be useful for you to know to navigate the upcoming months. I mentioned that one of my favorite of all sources of information is something called, it's put out by Lisa Renee, called Energetic Synthesis. And she has a very, very interesting technique in order to help sort out all of the different voices you hear, coming from, whether it's the mainstream media, coming from people with different agendas. She says, it is very important for starseeds and awakening people to get clear about discerning artificial intelligence messages of mind control, as well as cloned or projected holographic images. This can be felt crystal clear if you do your spiritual homework and communicate with your God self. Artificial messages coming from the environment and through controlled dark portal organizations and mind control people feels, this is the most important part, feels metallic, abrasive, acidic, energetically burdensome, and can sometimes feel like a sharp knife or blade-like. Sometimes it can make you feel suddenly physically ill with headaches, nausea, body part stabbing pains, and even diarrhea when you come into contact with it. AI feels sickening to the cosmic Christ consciousness. During this challenging time, pay attention to what you're feeling and how your body's responding and act accordingly to protect yourself. So that's the final practical piece of advice I want to give here. I do plan to include when we finish this series, I'm also going to send out a list of the sources I consider to be trustable and how you can do some of your own research on what is happening. Certainly, as I said from the beginning, all three worlds, from the middle world perspective, even from the underworld, even from the upper world, powerlessness. I don't know. But I got to keep my heart open and trust that human beings are supposed to have compassion and empathy. And I love all of you for showing up for this.
It reminds me of what, I think it was Ram Dass who said something about our challenge or our task here is how to keep our heart open in hell. Right, so it just feels like that's part of the... Or
actually like, thanks for that, Kaylin. What I brought up in the 2017 one, there's a tremendous admonition that comes in a small little book that might still be in print. It's a book called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment by Thaddeus Golas. He wrote the book to help people in Haight-Ashbury who are going on bad acid trips. But what he says is the final wisdom in that little book. No matter what is happening, no matter how difficult your circumstances may become, love as much as you can. No matter how difficult it is, love as much as you can. And that was the technique to get a person out of a bad acid trip. But it works for any kind of situation. I mean, for some people now, certainly the poor Filipinos, the poor Indians, those that end up in the hospitals, they're love as much as you can for as long as you can. There's definitely overwhelming circumstances happening, and whether it's a manufactured germ, whether it's a agent of warfare, whether it's designed to impose 5G, AI, whatever the agendas are. If it does turn out to be extremely difficult, or if it is really an amazing plan by the goddess and by great mystery to orchestrate the sudden overwhelming enlightenment of the planet. I mean, love as much as you can from wherever you're at. So let's open her up.
Okay, so it looks like Laura has her hand up, so I'm gonna unmute her. So Laura, and also I'm gonna put this on.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you, and good to see you, Daniel. I'm glad you got home. That's
Oh yeah,
so glad to
that
hear.
was quite a thing. I had
Oh,
had
my
to
God.
drive 8 hours in the middle of the night, and then made it to LAX, not even knowing sure I'd get on the flight, and I did.
Yep. The tensest time I've had during this whole thing is my nephew and getting him out of Spain. And when Trump made that announcement Wednesday night, no one's getting back from Europe. My whole family went, oh my God. So he came home from Barcelona. I haven't had that much stress, honestly, since then. So that's good. So my question is more middle world when I kind of talk about testing, because Bill Gates and this hammer, and have you read this policy paper, The Hammer and the Dance?
Well, I know about what I know was being presented in the October agenda, and the whole way he perceived that it was kind of like blow by blow what is actually taking place.
Oh, I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm talking about a guy named Thomas Puyo who wrote this policy article that, and all these charts and graphs and everything, that the only way out is testing everyone all the time, and knowing that everyone has been tested, and then we know it's safe to go back to normal. And I'm really, that I understand that we need to question that agenda, and I do not want the government telling me I've got to get a vaccine or anything like that. But the way out of this coronavirus does seem to be testing from every major source.
Well, the sources I have are that pretty much each country has a different test, and the great majority of them are just testing for coronavirus, all of them. So therefore, if they find that you have the flu or you've common cold or whatever, then you get you get tested positive. They haven't been able to analyze that if there is a specific thing here, and there's all the views out there that it's actually two different viruses, that one of them is just the regular flu, but then there's one which is the dry cough, right? But they can't do they really don't have a test. I mean, I can show you the sources on it.
Oh, sure. And the virus is mutating, with no question about it. And there are multiple activations is also the way my very trusted energetic healer that I work with.
Right.
She's also talking about the 5G is a huge part of this. It weakens our mucous membranes and makes us much more susceptible to upper respiratory.
Some of the sources that I was listing will have pretty great background on that. I mean, if a person wants to get the best possible background on that, is that Derek Brose, one of my heroes, he created an 1.5 hour long movie, it's free download, called 5G Trojan Horse.
Yeah.
And they're basically following the idea that during the lockdown, they're installing the upgraded 5G into schools, into malls, into stadiums, into sports arenas. That basically the upgrade is going on right now.
Yeah, that's a little too paranoid for me, but I hear you. And it's also about the reason we have to have 5G, which is I recruit in tech, and I kind of got on this high horse about, we don't need self-driving cars. We're solving the wrong problem. Our tech has expanded beyond our biology. It doesn't make sense. But that's exactly why we need 5G. 5G is for self-driving cars. They can't operate without it being the overall network. And that's
one of the reasons. But what they're not telling you is the fact that we already have a fiber optic system that could be made 5G, and it's not dangerous if it's in a fiber optic. It's only dangerous as Wi-Fi. And so if you can use a cable, it's not a problem.
That makes sense. That makes a little more. Okay.
So, but anyway, there's definitely a lot out there you can educate yourself on that particular issue. But one last thing I'll say about this is the fact that with the overload, So far, Zoom is not being overloaded, but free conference call is, and many
Yeah.
places people are not able to have the same speeds they normally have. Is that people are going to be demanding 5G, though. We must have it, without them even knowing that it's anything from 23 to 60 gigahertz, and that includes crowd control frequencies. It includes 60 gigahertz, which displaces oxygen molecules. That's the why it lowers the immune system and makes it difficult to breathe. It's just, that's a whole, there's a lot of stuff out there, and I can suggest you sources where you can go to look at that, but it needs to be questioned.
Yeah, very interesting. And then just the overall, maybe it's, I don't know which world this is in, but to me it's so obvious that as we destroy the trees and the planet's ability to breathe, well, then we're not going to be able to breathe. It's a no-brainer.
And they cut down lots of trees to put in 5G, by the way, because...
And more to make more toilet paper. I'm sorry. I wish I had a more positive
Hey, but I'll tell you a funny story. It's really just Canadians, Americans, and British. The Filipinos laugh at Americans for this. Because in fact, they use soap and water and something called the tabo. You know,
yeah.
It's like...
You know, it's just, no one gets that one. So the people who are really doing it are lying, because everybody else says I don't get it. But, you know, a washcloth works, people.
Okay,
but
let's see.
On a personal level, I have a really amazing thing going on in my chart. I have a 24-degree Taurus Jupiter. So that new moon, 7th chakra crown Venus moon is directly on that Jupiter, directly trine Pluto. And it's just amazing. I have all these just beautiful, beautiful things in my chart now, right this minute. And I'm just like,
well, then don't worry about middle world stuff now. Enjoy the transmissions coming from the celestial to you.
I'm having all these really major downloads and breakthroughs and about my own personal dynamics in relationship and power. But anything else that you have to add about that, and in terms of that? And today's my birthday, by the way.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. And everything in my chart is exact. The nodes are exactly trine my Venus. If it's not exact, it's 1 degree off. I'm having this window that's just like, wow. So anything you can add to that.
Well, then Laura, if no one hears from you again after tomorrow, then you are one of the examples of the one who's gone to the other Earth.
Exactly. Thank you. I've loved all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Awesome.
Thank you.
So if anybody else, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have anything you want to ask.
There's a lot in the chat box I haven't had a chance to look at.
Kelly was saying our hospital here in Tahoe is testing coronaviruses, but they're able to differentiate between them. COVID-19.
That's what they say.
Yeah, and what they're saying, not mutated.
There's skepticism about that, but anyway.
Right.
I want to wish Laura a happy birthday, and Laura, for $39, you can go to Home Depot and get a bidet and don't worry about toilet paper.
I've heard on Amazon you can get one of those ones that you attach, like the little spray thing that you attach to your tank for like $15. So I'm gonna look into that too. Happy birthday.
One thing that I found very helpful, one of the different protocols that I've found incredibly helpful at this time and I suggest it to those who may feel they might be coming down with something, is to do vitamin C flushes. Basically, you take 2,000 or 3,500 powder, and then about 15 minutes later, another, and then you get to the point where you get diarrhea. And then that allows you to know what your system can take of how much vitamin C. And every time I've done it, I've just felt so good. And the vitamin C stuff is really important here at this point.
Is that Camu vitamin C?
Is it what?
There's a powder of this
Yeah. Yeah,
chamomile.
there's different types of vitamin C, but it's easier to do this if you have it in the powder form, and you just mix it in water and every 15 minutes. And for me, my limit was 40,000.
Chiron is saying that chelated vitamin C, and she tells all her kids and parents to do that.
What?
But she's saying chelated vitamin C.
Oh, chelated. Lynn? Yeah? What is the type of vitamin C that we are using?
It has to be non-acidic.
Non-acidic.
Buffered.
Not the non-acidic type. Buffered. Lynn is a great researcher into all of this stuff. Anyone else jumping on?
Hi.
Oh, go ahead. Hi.
I just wanted to thank you, Danielle and Kaylee, and it's been really great, and I'm just so glad that I got to connect with you guys before all this happening and before my own Pluto cycle happening. And I really think what the school had to help me get through my own Pluto cycle, it was such a good practice for this time. I kind of glide into this with a little in between. I could enjoy my Jupiter return and the Uranus opposite the moon. But it's been really helping since I could pass through that. And I really want to thank you, Danielle, for the talks that we had. It really, really helped me to move through such a challenging time. Thank you so much. Blessings. And I also want to put this out, like from people. I mean, I come from a background, I come from Iran, so I was born right after the revolution, and we had to go through such a dark time. But no matter what happens in the world stage, I kind of feel like even if it comes to where a lot of things that we don't want gets implemented, it's not the end of the world. Iran is still people living, they're still thriving, they're still trying. So even if the worst comes to us, we still have a voice. And I think nothing is more really potent than just keeping our eyes open, just to be aware of what's happening. Because I think like anytime that we close our eyes and we're not paying attention, they can easily slide something into place. But just the fact that like more and more people are aware, it really helps. And I think with so much that's on the internet, and they can like, you know, spy on you and do all of that, they can also see that, okay, all these people are very aware. We cannot just slide something when, you know, 60-70% of population are reading these things and are aware of what we're about to do. So
Indeed, yeah. As Rajar put it, it forces any entrenched group to surrender its privileged position or else face revolution and or moral or spiritual decay.
I love Rajar. I'm probably on my book number 12 right now. I'm just like gobbling these things up. It's so wonderful. And I'm just so looking forward in our next time that we can talk and digest some of my studies.
Marvelous. Great seeing you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shiva. So Daniel, did you want to speak to the question from Kelly that came in before the class?
Yeah. Yeah, we plan to include in the fourth class about Eris. And in fact, that was one of the main reasons why in the summit we did at the end of 2017, we actually had a whole class dedicated to not just the Eris configurations in 2020, 2021, but also the way in which the planetary nodes of Saturn and Pluto are aligned in 2020. So there's plenty of other factors. What I wanted to do here was to present this larger view of why the things happening now are in this larger context. This is not just some any old Jupiter Pluto thing. You know, I mean, this is a larger dance that's happening. It's planetary. And tomorrow I'll speak of more about solutions also with regards to the use of the chart, but also what I think this whole thing is about the planetarization of consciousness, actually. But the other part she was bringing up, and this has to do with the role, the function of Eris, because, you know, Eris originally, she ends up being a quote negative figure. She wasn't invited, you know, she caused trouble, blah, 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 frequently. Now it's a symbol of the empowered feminine, you know, being willing to just tell the truth, to speak up, right? But if we take it out of the sphere of men and women, and I certainly think the situation that has happened now has taken us beyond identity politics and into more of a global situation of human beings, is that for men or women, Eris presents a challenge. Because why? If you tell the truth, if you speak out certain things that you know to be the case or what you're feeling, the reaction to it can be not what you're expecting. You know, I mean, like if I share some of the views that I'm an agnostic about, I'm not like trying to push a particular agenda, but say, hey, research 5G or what, or hey, maybe the testing, maybe maybe there's something going on with this virus that's really not the case, you know, or whatever. This can cause for people that have completely bought into just the mainstream story, you know, I mean, it just causes like I myself have sent out angry emails or things that I've sent out too quickly without thinking it through, you know, but still, like, Eris wants to tell the story, you know, to speak the truth, you know. So it's an interesting predicament to be thrown into the mix in 2020, and every one of us is going to have to face that kind of thing, you know. Who do we tell what we know to, you know, to people who are asleep and they're just going to cause trouble, people in the middle who want to have a larger view, they want to check out different sources and not just trust what some person, I mean, even people that just have to say every few minutes when they give a talk, I'm a scientist, you know, so therefore that makes them somehow better than other people who are researchers, you know. I mean, you have to be on the lookout for stuff like that, and just be careful, you know, tell your truth, but not if it's going to cause not the result you want.
So I think we're at our time, and we're going to meet again tomorrow talking about the foundations of shamanic astrology to help people navigate more personally. And Kelly saying thank you for that. Mm-hmm. So is there anything you want to say in closing, Daniel, before we end this?
Well, I'm just like everybody else with this. It's just like it's kind of like every hour, if you're caught into this in the middle world, it's like, I'm trying to figure this all out, you know, and then the brain starts heating up, you know. Well, some say, well, that's a sign of an impending ascension. Oh no, but actually that's the sign of the coronavirus. Oh no. For those of you who can, take advantage if you're in a place that you can unplug, that you can be in nature, that you can sit with the rocks, sit with the elders, be with the mother. Find out within yourself at this time what your connection to divinity is, who you really are behind this this strange dance that we find ourselves in, that Ram Dass calls the only dance there is, right? So
beautiful.
I love all of you. Thank you for your courage to be here and to listen to what we all have to say here. And hope I've really, for those of you who are in the Oracle course, I'm really sad to have not been able to have sat with you in person in circle. I did have the great experience of giving a presentation to TAG, the Tucson Astrologers Guild. 25 souls showed up, and we sat in the room, and it was just like a phenomenal gathering in council of souls. And it might be the last time I get to do that in a very long time. So I'm just really grateful. I think just to remember to be grateful to what we have and who we love and how we're loved.
Beautiful. So we will meet back here. We'll send out, there's for the next class tomorrow at 5, there's a new Zoom link that will be sent out to I guess probably to everybody who signed up for that class. So look forward to seeing you then, and hope everyone has a good night and day between now and then.
Mm.
Love you guys. This is
Good
Katia.
night. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Love you.